Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 229. We're going to talk about North Koreans and Russia. So, a South Korean intelligence servants uh, reported that 1,500 troops, North Korean troops, were sent to Russia. Now, the spin of it in the American media is that Russia is desperate. That they are losing the war against Ukraine. And this is the same line that we've been hearing for years now. I believe it's 2 years, going on 2 years now. They've been telling us that Putin is about to lose, that he's about to be overthrown, that the people are really unhappy with this situation in Russia. Now, I haven't talked about this before, but the West was really fixated on how many people were trying to get out of Russia because they don't support Putin and they don't support the war. Well, imagine if after an election, everyone who promised that they would flee the country if certain person was elected, they actually left. Well, that's what that is, right? So a small group of people, a minority of people, decided that they were going to leave Russia, and so that became was spun into saying that Putin is about to be overthrown. In addition to this, the United States cut Russia off from the SWIFT system, SWIFT, SWIFT, and that stands for, as it turns out, of course, it stood for something, and it stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. And yes, it's a lot easier to say SWIFT, but I'm guessing that Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications was something that they came up with to be able to spell a certain different kind of word, sort of like Patriot Act, right? Every single letter of Patriot Act stands for something in a very long title. Anyway, so they're kicked out of the SWIFT system, which is basically the way that banks all over the world settle their accounts at the end of the day, right? Because everyone is dealing with their own currency, but if you buy stuff from another currency, then you have to exchange everything and then settle at the end of the day. And so the SWIFT system was a very efficient system, apparently, that everyone was using. And the United States cut Russia off from the SWIFT system. In addition to this, Russia bought U.S. treasuries and as sort of a way of holding foreign currency. It's something that everyone does, and and U.S. seemed to be a good place to invest, and the United States seized those treasury assets. And so all of this was to try to destroy Russia, destroy their economy. But if you look at Russia now, it is actually doing better. I just heard from a different podcast. I think it was Jimmy Dore. He said that the person on there said that Russia's economy surpassed Germany. So Russia's economy is growing. And those of you who know already know that Russia has all of the natural resources that everyone else in the world craves, from crude oil to precious metals to also gemstone as well, which is probably why the United States tried to plunder Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, but that's a different story. Now, at the same time, people have been telling us that Russia is desperate for troops, that they're running out of men to fight. They also are telling us that the Ukraine is winning the war, but apparently they have been about to win, and that Putin has been defeated for like 2 years. And after 600,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers, and the army in the Ukraine being so desperate to replenish its troops that they are literally kidnapping people off of the street who look like they're of age, not caring if they are not, and then sending them to the front to die. Now, what's his name? Zelensky comes to America constantly begging for money, saying that they're almost going to win. Something that you never hear about anymore is the Kursk offensive, and apparently it's a mop-up operation now. Russians are just basically hunting down whoever is left. And of course, it's no longer being reported here in the United States. And so Zelensky, if you were listening to Ron Paul, Zelensky was saying that his new strategy for victory is to get the United States into the war. But apparently, the US is not going to go into war with Ukraine, join the war with Ukraine because they're anti-Semitic, right? Because they're really upset that weapons and money are being sent to Israel instead. Now, if you listen to Judge Napolitano in his Judging Freedom uh, podcast, then you'll know that the people who he has on there, from Colonel McGregor, Larry Johnson, Ray McGovern, yeah, all of this spin is basically another example of projection, right? Everything is the opposite of what you hear. It's not that Russia is desperate. Russia is winning. Russia is prosperous. Ukraine is desperate. Ukraine is basically has been demolished. There's nothing there. And whatever is left is being, plundered or corrupted in some way because of all of the money that's being sent over there from the United States, our taxpayer money being sent over there to fuel and feed the corruption. So, what's going on? If it's not because Russia is desperate, then what's going on? Wars are opportunities for training. Okay, especially if the country that you're allied with is winning, then you want to learn as much as you can from them. And this has happened all throughout history. Germany sent troops to Spain to assist Franco in the in the civil war that they had there just prior to World War II. And so this was a way to give them battle experience, to test out some battle strategy, even some of the equipment that they had. Right. And so lots of people also trained with the United States, right? All of NATO did, South Korea, anyone who does maneuvers with the United States, well, what they're doing is they're being trained by the United States. They're learning tips and tricks to be able to win a war, which is kind of funny considering the United States has not won a war in a very long time. And if you want to count World War One and World War Two, well, okay, fine. You can do that because that's what everyone seems to believe anyway. So we'll do that. But since World War II, then, yeah, no war has been won. So why are these people being sent to Russia? To learn the winning strategy, right? People are going to take advantage of all of the lessons that Russia is learning in their fight against the Ukraine. Now, why is that so significant? Well, because Ukraine is basically using NATO strategy. And we all know that NATO strategy is the strategy of the United States. So Russia beat NATO strategy, aka in this proxy war, which everyone was calling a proxy war. Russians defeated American strategy, American equipment, American, uh, mindset, everything. Uh, the Russians defeated it. And so they're going to share this information with anyone who wants to learn it. And so, of course, North Korea, who's always living in tension with South Korea, who is also using US strategy, right? So if the Russians could beat the Ukraine, who is using US strategy, well, what was that strategy? And just in case something turns hot in Korea, they want to have access to that strategy. What did they do to defeat the systems that the South Koreans are using? How did they overcome or render useless the defense strategies of American strategy using people? And so they want to learn. Uh, so you can also see that Iran, who has a close relationship with Russia, easily, I say, easily defeated Israel's Iron Dome, or Cotton Dome, whatever you want to call it. But right, so Iran being close in touch with Russia, probably shared information. But I've also believed that the Iranians themselves have, because they've been so oppressed by Israel for so long, they came up with a strategy to defeat Israel. And I explained it before, but I even explained it to my children who are in college and out of college, and even to my one son who's in middle school. I explained to them the strategy. If you know that the defense basically uses really expensive missiles, uh, but they have a limited supply of them, then what are you going to do? You are going to have low-cost missiles, but in such huge numbers that they expend all of their ammunition, after which they are completely vulnerable. So Iron Dome, ha. And we know this is true because the Houthis used it too, right? So hypersonic missiles in combination with massive quantity of missiles, yeah, you can't defeat that with the defense that the United States and everyone closely tied to the United States is using. All of their strategy is pretty much useless. I've been saying in class in the middle school classes that I teach that basically the United States is where um, you know military strategy was during the Civil War, World War One. You had obsolete strategy up against modern weapons, and that is not a good situation. But the problem is here that it's the United States that has the obsolete strategy going up against people, although probably not as economically strong as the United States, or at least because it has the reserve currency, the United States has a reserve currency. It looks like it has the strongest economy, but it's the other militaries that have better weapons. Right. So, whatever Russia is doing in Ukraine, they learned so many lessons. They trimmed a lot of the fat. They got rid of all of the, uh, how shall I say it, political hires, the insiders who work their connections to achieve a high rank in the military and in the government. Yeah, they weeded all of them out after years of war. Who was really on top of their game, who was just pretending, who actually was competent, who is not, right? And they got rid of all of the incompetent people. And the United States and everyone else who's associated with the United States has not even begun to do that. And so if a hot war were to start, there are going to be such heavy losses. That's my prediction. There are going to be some massive losses on the part of the United States. And so I always discourage people, don't join the military, right? At least not right now. Like if they're invading the shores, then okay, that you got no choice. But at this point, since it's just imperialism, it's just the United States trying to protect its empire and destabilize other countries so that other countries can't have peace. Yeah, don't go in the military. I mean, it's so bad. The Houthis are using that technology, those weapons against Israel, and are being successful. The Houthis, they're supposed to be this backwater, primitive, tribal nation, right, that easily defeated in a war. Yeah, the US Navy couldn't take them out, and that's why the Strait of Hormuz is still closed to American and Israeli connected shipping, right? They can't get through there, right? They cannot overcome the Houthis. And the Houthis also shot missiles into Israel and they landed, right? There was no defense against it. And so we are looking at something really horrible in the future if hot wars start to break out. And make no mistake, China probably has access to it too. So Taiwan is just basically vulnerable. So, what can we know? Propaganda does not win wars. Being woke does not help with unaliving people. Projection, which is what the Democrats see, or a lot of people in government seem to do, projection does not make an army strong, right? Ooh, you're cheating. Well, no, you're cheating. Bribery does not lead to having the best people in charge, right? But it does lead people, right? Propaganda does lead people to believe their own crap, their own lies. they begin to believe it, and so they focus on other things. Meanwhile, all of the military, all aspects of the military, just basic maintenance as well, is not kept up. And so you have equipment failure, right? And they don't pay attention to it because they're focused on expensive new equipment, right? Getting all those multi-billion-dollar defense contracts to develop expensive new equipment. But the quantities are too low, like the F-35. They're so expensive that you can't have enough of them. And so there is no quantity of production. There's no production period. And so there are no stockpiles either because we gave it all to Israel and Ukraine. And so what was Colonel McGregor was saying, we have enough ammunition for 30 days of war or something like that, or 2 weeks of war, and after that we're done, right? And you might say, well, we'll just make more. Yeah, where are the factories? At what factory, man? And the few factories that we actually have produce in what is it, a month, what Russia produces in a day, right? And you might say, oh, we'll just ramp up production. Yeah, okay, but they're going to charge the American people the same amount, right? Maybe they even have emergency pricing increases, right? Because they're forcing the workers to work even longer hours. So uh, the incompetent are promoted. Waste, fraud, corruption is promoted in an environment like this. And so the reality is that the West is failing. You got the BRICS Bank, right? Today or tomorrow is the last day of the meeting, right? This is October 24th. And already people are realizing that the BRICS is uh, making headway, right? They are enabling countries to move away from the dollar, which is very, very bad, especially when you understand that the Treasury, US Treasury, becomes the safe asset that is held by so many different entities, so many different countries, so many different banks, and they are becoming worthless especially because people don't need them anymore. And so you have more countries wanting to join the BRICS, even US allies trying to join the BRICS because they want to get away from US hegemony, US dollar hegemony, the weaponized dollar, like, oh, you didn't do something we told you to do, sanctions, or you're doing something we don't like, sanctions, right? Do what we did to do what the United States did to Russia, right? Kicking them off the SWIFT system. No one wants that. No one likes a bully. Everyone wants to get away from a bully. And so now all of these other countries are cooperating with each other. Even enemies now are cooperating with each other because the United States is a bigger threat. The United States, which engages in regime change, election interference, depriving countries of freedom, funding dictators for their continued oppression of the people there. I mean, it's sick, really, right? And people want to get away from that for self-determination, right? To be able to live by their own values. And those values, make no mistake, a lot of those values would make our stomachs turn. We don't like them. How could anyone live that way? But that's what they want. And so we have to leave them alone. I mean, think about it, because of the US involvement all over the world, the radicalization of the Middle East, that's on the United States. In the way that the US created Hamas, or Israel created Hamas, the US created ISIS, right? It's the US meddling in other countries that radicalized, right? Uh, Sort of uh, revitalized radical Islam, right? So it's because of what the United States was doing. They took uh, a religion that was becoming more secular and mainstream, and they brought back conservative, radical Islam. So whoever is pulling the strings in the US government, and I did talk about it before in the episode on kleptocracy, right? Whoever is in on this in the government, they have no good intent for the United States, right? They don't care what happens to the United States and the people who live here. They don't care, right? They're never going to see an illegal immigrant coming on their property. They're never going to have to shop and have to walk by people who are, addicted to fentanyl. They're not going to have to deal with any of that, and so they don't care. More and more people, not just here in the United States, but all over the world, have to rediscover freedom. People are calling people who want freedom again fascists, right? Far right extremists, because they want to live life in their own way. Hopefully Donald Trump is not sharing everything that he is planning on doing, that he in fact did learn his lessons, that a lot of the people that he had trusted before stabbed him in the back, right? And so that he'll be more careful as to who to trust and who to go with when it comes to picking his cabinet and people who are going to help him run the government. And if he does that, like if I did an episode yesterday, like no matter who you vote for, you get inflation. Well, hopefully he's hiding all of the Javier Malay type government cutting, right? Reducing the size of government 80%, by bringing Elon Musk on. And Musk, he's been posting all those Milton Friedman videos, right? And so maybe he's bringing him on to cut government employment roles by 80% the way he did over at X. And if he does that, much respect to him. Maybe we might come back from the brink. Maybe people will start living in peace again. People will rediscover the joys of freedom once again. Wouldn't that be awesome? But yeah, so not a big deal that North Koreans are in Russia. It's not that Russians are desperate, but rather South Koreans should probably pay heed and start, waking up and sort of distancing itself from the United States. At least that's what it seems prudent. That would be the prudent way to go about things. Well, anyway, that's it for this episode. I will talk to you all later.